Hello and welcome to Book Reviews Kill, a podcast about fantasy, sci-fi, and horror novels. I'm Evan.
I'm Chad.
And you are joining us today for a recap and discussion of A Court of Wings and Ruin, Book 3 in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas. All right, Chad, here we are, in the thick of it. The girthy bits.
We are in the thick of it indeed. Oh man, just a bowl of molasses. Sticky. It's collecting all of the flies, good and bad.
This is a hefty book.
This was a hefty book.
Yeah.
I mean, I breezed through it. It was a really fun book. Like, there's definitely some criticisms that I have for it. There's some praise that I'll heap upon it. But please know, through all I say, I think this is a really fun book. And if you like fantasy, if you just like reading, you will enjoy this book. Don't take it too seriously. Read it for what it is. It's a character-driven romance fantasy jaunt. I just want that to be my platform going forward.
Yeah, there's some deep parts in this book, just like there were in the last two. It's a lot to think about. Sarah J. Maas is throwing a lot at the wall here. I mean, I've talked at length about how this is my least favorite book in this series, mostly because this volume feels so all over the place plot-wise. There are some terrific action sequences littered in here, and while the first part of the book is pretty solid, it just gets like messier as it goes. You know, we keep tossing stuff onto this pile, and then by the end of the book, we're left with just what the hell just happened. But the ending is kind of cool.
The ending is kind of cool.
As thrown together as it is, the ending is pretty cool.
It's very appropriate. The rest of the story, you know, it's like cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it probably could have been given a once over, or a twice over in the editing department.
There were some opportunities, which we'll get into a little bit later, for some growth, some depth, some really cool character-driven plot elements to come to fruition that I feel like we had all the setup for, that then just kind of pittered and died.
Yeah, a little bit. But we did get to see a little bit more of some characters. Like there's more Cassian, there's more Nesta, but then there's also not as much of other characters. So
right. And like, did we really get more of Nesta, or did we just get more of Nesta being mad all the time for no reason?
This
being a meanie.
All right, let's just get into it.
Okay.
We're gonna do the recap. It's gonna be a good one.
It's gonna be a good one.
All right, if this is your favorite book in the series, everybody, don't worry, we're not going to tear it to complete shreds,
hey,
obviously.
That's why I started with, this is really fun, and you will definitely enjoy this book.
Yeah. But we're going to dig into it a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
The book begins with Feyre returning with Tamlin to the Spring Court, pretending she had been coerced into Rhysand's court against her will. Secretly, Feyre is furious at Tamlin's betrayal and plotting her revenge. As per his arrangement with Hybern, Tamlin has opened the Spring Court's lands to Hybern's invading forces. Jurian and two royals from Hybern arrive in the Spring Court, intent on inspecting the magical wall, separating the human and Fey lands. In the Spring Court, Feyre is venerated as the Cursebreaker, the one who ended Amarantha's vicious rule over Prythian. Feyre sows distrust throughout Tamlin's court and undermines the High Priestess Ianthe. She and Tamlin argue, and in one instance, Tamlin becomes so incensed he causes a room to explode. Feyre deliberately keeps her shields down, and Tamlin's court sees Feyre's cuts and bruises caused by the flying debris. They begin to hate Tamlin for his abuse. She also incites Tamlin's jealousy by confiding in Lucien, Tamlin's best friend. Feyre accompanies Jurian and the Hybern royals to the wall to check for holes in the magical barrier. The royals reveal that they are looking for places they can use the cauldron to destroy the wall, allowing Hybern to conquer the human lands and enslave the people. With this information, Feyre is resolved to leave the Spring Court and return to the Night Court. Feyre later finds Ianthe sexually assaulting Lucien. She breaks into Ianthe's mind and compels the priestess to stop. But the Hybern royals find her and reveal that they have been poisoning Feyre for weeks. Feyre and Lucien kill the royals, but their physical strength and magical strength is sapped from poison. She agrees to take Lucien with her to the Night Court. They travel through the autumn and winter lands and are confronted by Lucien's brothers. but Azrael and Cassian intervene and escort the two back to the Night Court. Feyre is reunited with Rhysand and happy to see her friends, healed from their confrontation with the King of Hybern. Her sisters, who were forced into the cauldron and transformed into High Fae, are angry, depressed, and distant with Feyre. The cauldron has made Elaine a seer, while Nesta went into the cauldron and stole death from it. Since Hybern intends to put the cauldron in a weak spot in the wall to destroy it, Feyre asks Nesta to use her connection to the cauldron to patch the holes in the wall. Nesta and Amren begin searching for useful spells in the Book of Magic. Feyre asks the Bone Carver to fight alongside them in the war, and he agrees, but only if she can fetch the magical Ouroboros mirror for him. The mirror forces a person to see your true self. Those who have tried to take it in the past have been driven mad. The Carver will need a Fey body to leave his prison. Another creature, Bryaxis, agrees to leave its prison in a pit to help fight in the upcoming war. Elaine sees a vision of a mortal queen who is cursed to turn into a firebird every night. Lucian volunteers to go find the queen and ask for her help in the upcoming war. Rhysand calls a meeting of all the High Lords, but before they convene, Hybern attacks the Summer Court. The Night Court goes to help and finds a slaughter in progress. Feyre and Morrigan fight through all the soldiers they encounter, while Rhysand tries to reach the king, who uses magic and illusion to evade his capture. Hybern withdraws and the fighting ends, but the casualty count is high. Hybern's forces are still considerably larger than Prithian's, and all the Fey courts must be united for them to stand a chance against so large an enemy. The meeting of the High Lords is held in the Dawn Court, a neutral territory. All the lords participate, including Beirun from the Autumn Court and Tamlin. Both verbally attack Feyre and Rhysand, accusing them of working with Hybern. Tamlin is particularly bitter about Feyre's betrayal. Her plotting left his court in shambles. As a result, the Spring Court has been taken over by Hybern, and its people were forced to flee to other courts. Nesta's connection to the cauldron makes her ill with a sense of foreboding, just before a huge wave of power sweeps across the land, and the cauldron brings down the wall. The High Lords, except for Beren and Tamlin, pledge to work together against Hybern, and they all leave for their respective courts. Feyre and her family travel to the human lands to warn them of the coming threat. Elaine glamours herself to look human so she can plead with her fiancé to take as many people as possible into his father's fortress. When Grayson sees Elaine, he knows she is Fey and rejects her. Jurian is also there to warn the humans about the war. He is not the enemy, but instead has been spying on Hybern, working to undermine the king and save the humans. He tells Rhys that Tamlin went back to Hybern and betrayed the High Lords, and Hybern is planning to attack the Summer Court again. Using Jurian's information, the Fae ambush Hybern. There is a bloody battle, but these soldiers don't make up the bulk of Hybern's army. Feyre goes to ask a magical creature, the Suriel, if it can see where the king of Hybern and the rest of his army are hiding. The Suriel tells her that the cauldron cloaks the king's location, but Nesta, with her connection to the cauldron, can find both. The Suriel also tells Feyre that Amren and a spell in the Book of Magic are the key to winning the war. Ianthe finds Feyre and kills the Suriel. She pursues Feyre through the woods, and Feyre traps the priestess and her soldiers by luring them inside the weaver's cottage, where the monster eats them. Helion finds Feyre in the forest and takes her back to the war camp. Nesta opens a link between herself and the cauldron and finds its location, but the link goes both ways, and the cauldron sees their location too. In the night, Elaine is kidnapped and taken to Hybern's camp. Feyre disguises herself as Ianthe and sneaks into Hybern's camp to rescue Elaine. She receives help from Jurian and Azrael, and as she flees with Elaine, the king sends his hounds to attack. Tamlin, who has been secretly working against Hybern from the inside, shapeshifts into a lion and saves their lives, allowing them to escape. Feyre retrieves the Ouroboros mirror, and the Bone Carver pledges his help. As both sides prepare for battle, the Bone Carver, the Weaver, and Bryaxis join the front lines. Surprisingly, Beren, Tamlin, and Grayson's armies join the battle against Hybern. Feyre's father and Lucian have found the Firebird Queen, and her army joins the fight. Miriam and Dracone's armies come to Prithian's aid as well. Even with the additional help, the fight does not go well for the human Fae army. The cauldron destroys the Bone Carver and wreaks havoc on the Night Court's army. Nesta amasses her power as a distraction for the king, while Amren and Feyre go to the cauldron to nullify its power. Feyre touches the cauldron, and its magic traps her. Amren goes into the object. Amren lied to Feyre. The spell is not to nullify the power in the object. Amren uses it to unbind herself from the body she is trapped in. Nesta and Cassian face off against Hybern. The king kills Nesta's father, and nearly kills Nesta and Cassian when Elaine stabs him in the neck from behind. Nesta then beheads the king of Hybern. Despite the king's death, the battle rages on. Amren transforms into her true self, a winged creature of blinding light. She unleashes volleys of flame on the enemy hordes before burning out. The broken cauldron begins to pull everything into its void. Feyre tries a spell to fix the cauldron, but her power is not strong enough. Rhysand gives her his power, and in doing so, sacrifices his life. The cauldron is fixed, but Feyre is distraught and demands that the other High Lords resurrect Rhysand like they did for her. They all do, including Tamlin, and Rhysand is brought back to life. When Rhysand died, he saw Amren in the cauldron and asks if she wants to come back. She does, and then is given a resurrected High Fae body. After the battle, Feyre, Nesta, and Elaine burn their father's body. Feyre asks Miriam and Dracone to hide the cauldron on their island. Vassa, the Firebird Queen, asks Feyre to work on a spell that can break her curse. Feyre calls a meeting to discuss a new treaty between humans and Fae before she, her friends, and family return to Valeris and the Night Court.
All right. When you say it all out loud like that, it's not so complicated.
No, pretty simple.
Things happen.
Yeah, things. One thing that one finger you cannot point at this book is to say that things are not happening. The story is not progressing.
Oh, it's
They're
progressing.
not going and getting stuff.
It's progressing past anything. We're not giving things time to make sense sometimes. It's just like that happens, and then now we're over here. Okay, cool.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
that is kind of like one of my chief complaints about these, like this book in particular, but the other ones kind of do it sometimes. But like Nesta opens up her connection to the cauldron. It's like, well, how though? Like, what is like? I get that she was in the cauldron, but like it's kind of like what I talk about sometimes when I reference the pet peeve that I have of magic just magicking. It's just you try hard, you think really hard, and it happens. But I think with these books, we need to get a move on. It just happens. So, but it's also.
I told myself that like a million times while reading these books. Like, Chad, it's about the characters, it's about the relationships, about the interpersonal connection, personal growth, overcoming trauma. It's not about how the magic works. Like, she's not Brandon Sanderson building a magic system and talking about flecks of metal burning on her stomach. Like, it's fine, dude. But man, there was a few times that I was like, what? Like, okay, sure.
Yeah, that's a big word for this book is sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Elaine stabs the King of Hybern from behind. Sure.
Just puking on the battlefield, not 3 chapters before. Sure. Magic powder takes away your magic. Sure.
Feyre and Rhysand are hooking up in a tent while everyone's dying around them. Sure.
Yeah. Blowjob death. Sure.
Yeah.
That did happen though. Like, wow.
Oh yeah, that did happen. We were all there for it. That they were, what would we do in that situation? I don't know. Maybe I would do the same thing. Probably not, but maybe.
Probably fighting.
Or sleeping.
Yeah.
I mean, it would tire you out, but
I never thought I would say this, but I'm almost tired of perfect sex. Like, I kind of wish Rhysand would have like gone soft halfway through a couple times. Like just a few times.
Yeah, like he's stressed out. Like,
sex.
why not? Yeah.
Because
just like it's not happening tonight. Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah. Now there is one night that Feyre says, it's not happening tonight. I just am like
Totally.
sad. I forget exactly what it was, but I was refreshed. I was like, all right,
Yeah,
cool.
there we go.
We need to have some valleys because we're just peaking too hard.
We're peaking a lot.
Constant peaking.
There's a lot of sex scenes in this one.
It's a lot of sexy.
Um, which I mean, I personally never really have a problem with them. It's always kind of, I think it's kind of cool when they they're, but when they're in the library that one time, they're like, all right, let's go get it on again. And I kind of rolled my eyes and I was like, oh my God, like again. And then
Right.
and then everybody like broke in there and they couldn't, so that was
Totally.
kind of nice. But I think I feel what you're saying. I mean, I think there's a phrase that I'm going to repeat probably a couple times during this episode, but it's a fantasy. So the perfect sex aspect of it is part of the fantasy. The
Totally.
like how much Feyre and Rhysand are just they are obsessed with each other.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
let's talk about Rhysand real quick.
Okay.
I don't know how you feel, and I want your opinion on this too. But I did not like Rhysand as much in this book as I did in A Court of Mist and Fury. What about you?
Same.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
He was fine. He was boring.
Right. Yeah. I feel like his
It's not
kind
like I
of
didn't like him. He was just like
no, of
not
course.
there.
How could you not like Rhysand?
Right.
Obviously, but I mean, he's like overprotective to the point that it makes him kind of a flat character. Like, there's nothing wrong with him being overprotective. It's part of his character, but it was his whole thing in this book. It's like that trait
That and
kind of
sacrifice.
yeah, like that trait kind of pushes out the sharp-witted character that we had in the previous book. He was almost like a little mischievous, very much he was
Oh
much
yeah.
more flirtatious and fun and
He's the Matthew McConaughey of Faye. He's constantly relaxed. He's like, hey
in
man.
the
It's like
previous book,
in
but
the
in
previous
this
books,
one,
yeah.
yeah, he's wound up so tight. I mean, and obviously the situation is very dire. Prithian is more in danger than it ever has been. He's in a position to be able to help quite a bit, probably one of the highest positions to be able to help as much as he can. And so I understand the amount of pressure that's on him, obviously, but it's just
Considerable.
it's he felt kind of flat for me in this book. And I
Yeah.
really like Rhysand is one of my favorite characters in this entire series. And that was one of the things about this book on my read through where in Court of Mist and Fury, every time he walked into a room, I was stoked that he was in the
Stoked.
room. And then in
Yep.
this book, I was kind of like he's such a wet blanket. Like he's just,
Yeah.
not it's not super bad, but it's just, like
I gotta say, I kind of feel the same for both Feyre and Rhysand, and another character that I'll get to here in a second. But their relationship, in my opinion, because everything should follow my opinion,
that's why we started a podcast.
right? They needed a little more conflict in their relationship. Like, I get that
Hmm.
Rhysand is the perfect mate, and she
Yeah.
is like they're perfect for each other. But he's like so like, yup, you get it, you do you. Like, maybe have something that he doesn't understand about women, and through her explaining, like, hey, it wasn't cool when you did that, and he's like, oh yeah. Like it's not like have like an aha or something because like it's just too perfect. It was boring.
I think I'm going to disagree with you there because
Okay.
there is a conversation that Rhysand and Feyre have that is very akin to a really healthy conversation that a lot of couples have, which is that kind of permission to call each other out on stuff and to hold each other accountable for things. I thought that
Yeah,
was
but
a I guess it's not really
they
an
hold each
argument.
other accountable. Like have a scene where that happens, you know? Like that's fine. Okay.
But
I,
I'm just saying that
you're
it's
yeah.
not like this it's not this 100% like gilded perfect thing. Like they do
You're right.
have but they are I guess I would agree with you in the sense that I guess in this book they don't really come to a head about anything. They don't really hard disagree on anything.
Right. There's no
Um
hurdles in their relationship that they need
I
to
guess
overcome.
not really, but I think that that's not like this book isn't really about Feyre and Rhysand's relationship because that was what the last book was about.
You're right.
Like like I think at least what Maas was trying to do was have their relationship kind of be this realized thing that they could move through this conflict together in, and
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily like, all right, so we're gonna have this giant, focus on Prithian being under attack by this other force, and also have Rhysand and Feyre working out their relationship. Like we couldn't have both,
Right. And I
So
mean
that's
this in support of what you're saying, this was a busy story
right.
as
So if you
is.
had thrown
So
in like them having those hurdles, I feel like it would have just it would have been
Yeah.
even more messy. That's not to say that it, I mean, it's not super realistic, but I don't think we're going for realism in
No, but
relationships here.
it wasn't that interesting. You know, like
Oh, I see what you're saying.
last
Okay,
book there
yeah.
was like every time that they were having a conversation they were like growing or figuring something out about each other,
Or
learning, or
picking
she
at
was
each
mad at
other.
him. Yeah. And it was like there was just like, okay, cool, we're good. And it's like, okay, that's great, but like
Well, there's so
I
many
don't know.
moments in this book too where they kind of like send these cute little like texts to each other through the bond,
Yeah.
and
Bond texts.
it's like this is a really serious situation and you guys are like like
Giggling. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of love it too because I'm a sucker for flirting. I love
Me
flirting and
too.
flirtation, and I love it when a couple that's kind of like established and is committed and serious can still flirt with each other, and they're kind of
Yeah.
still pursuing each other in a way sometimes, which is so cute and awesome.
Totally,
But
and they can still
it,
flirt with other people, like kind of like
yeah,
playfully, like I flirt with like my
yeah,
dude friends. I probably flirt with
totally,
you.
yeah, we flirt all
And
the
then
time. I mean, it's so I do see what you're saying though, because it's not as big of a part of the book as it was in the previous book.
yeah, and I really liked that in the previous book.
Yeah, and maybe it would have been nice if we had seen that same budding kind of like cute relationship between anybody else. And I think it's attempted kind of with like Nesta and Cassian, but it's just there's not really any of that in this book.
I didn't have that thought until you just put it in my head, but that's exactly what this book needed. It needed that little spark because that's like kind of the like a really like pillar that holds up these stories is like that flirty love spark, that first 6 months of the relationship
Yeah,
juice. You know,
yeah.
these
Where
books are
this,
rich in it, and this last one really wasn't. But it
yeah,
so easily could have been. That's I think that's my biggest qualm about if there's any big complaint that I have, it's that there's a lot of unfulfilled potential in this story. In their relationship being more interesting, in Lucian's character, he's one of my favorite, if not favorite characters.
yeah.
He does nothing in this book. He gets like sent away.
But Lucian's in like a really weird spot too because he's just been taken out of the spring court and kind of like the reality that Tamlin is a pretty awful person is kind
Oh
of
yeah.
really hitting home for
Oh,
him.
he's been
And
cast adrift.
yeah, and he's in a place where people don't trust him. And I mean,
Yeah,
I
but have
agree
him
with you.
stay and struggle with that and become part of the
Yeah,
crew through this like that was kind
for
of some
sure. No,
sandpapery
yeah,
friction
yeah.
I needed.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point is that the friction was hinted at but not really shown
Yeah.
with Lucian.
Man, we could have had this cool growth and him like moving in on the next chapter. Now, I don't know what the next books are about. Maybe that happens, but like I just thought that he could have become when he was leaving with Feyre, I was so stoked. I was like, yes, that is what the
Feyre and
crew
Lucian adventure.
needed. Yeah, we
Yeah.
needed like Feyre and Lucian to be. I wanted Lucian to be with the crew, Rhysand's inner circle.
It makes sense that they're not very accepting of him, though,
Right.
obviously, right? I mean, it's a pretty tight knit group, and letting in somebody that was so close to Tamlin in a supporting capacity, not like Feyre was, because Feyre was obviously really close to Tamlin, but she was in there in a whole different way.
Way different way.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, let's talk about the beginning of the book a little bit, because and we can kind of like
Okay.
wrap back around to Lucian when him and Feyre escape. But one part that really stuck out to me was Feyre forcing Ianth to bash her
Oh
hand with a
boy.
rock. Um,
Farrah goes a
wow.
little feral a few times in these. It was dirty and it was kind of gross. Rise above it. Don't sink to it and some. It just seemed like the a very bullyish sort of move, and it's like
I mean, but what was
I
Ianth
was
doing right
loving it.
before that
Oh, I
though?
was
Yeah,
loving it,
yeah.
but like the base side of me was loving it. It was appealing to my like I don't know. I feel like there could have been a cleverer way for that feeling to be generated without having like a just mangled hand. Like it was just so brutal and crude. I think it was crude is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I think to kind of pile up onto what you're saying there, I thought like Pharaoh, why don't you just if you're gonna be this brutal, just kill her.
Yeah.
And because she's kind of monologuing, and then the other two royals happen upon them, and it's like you this
Yeah.
whole situation could have been avoided if you just
Yeah, you just got
like
classic evil
obviously
person.
she's terrible, so just take her out if you're going to be this brutal about it. It would be a net benefit to this entire scenario. But no, you wanted to like monologue, and I felt like it was just a little bit out of character for Feyre.
Yeah. Like I
But
said, it was
to be
too
fair,
bullyish.
what was Eanth doing right before Feyre happened upon her and Lucian? I
Oh,
mean,
she
you know what
was
I
sexually assaulting
right,
Lucian.
exactly. So I totally get the
Oh,
vitriol.
she
I get,
deserved it.
yeah. But like this, man, Sarah, Mrs. Maas, like the
This is Maas.
Mrs. Moss, the description of like the rock is it was like a wet thump first,
Oh
and
my
then there was a
goodness.
crack, and
And
then
then it
it's
got
just like,
crunchy, dude.
gross.
And then sticky. Yeah, it was, I mean, her descriptor words, like we said earlier, I think last podcast, if this story was a forest, it would be a jungle because it's like Tweety birds and bright colors and plants trying to kill you just everywhere. It's great.
Speaking of Moss's vocabulary, uh, the word mate is really abused in
It
this
is
book.
so abused. There are a few things that are very
Yeah,
abused in this book.
the M dashes and the ellipses.
Yep, the
Very.
corners twitching of people's mouths.
Oh yeah, people's mouths twitch up quite a bit. Yeah,
Yep.
that was a thing in
Uh,
Lycanius too. I noticed
yeah, that
that.
was the thing in
Yeah,
Lycanius, huh? There was another one that was like, oh man,
vulgar gesture makes another appearance in this book quite
it
often.
does. It
Yeah,
makes 20 or 30 vulgar gestures as well.
yeah. Still a lot of smirking. It's a thing.
Yep, it's a
It's
thing.
fine.
Also, like funny body heat tropes. Like the only way we can survive the cold is by cuddling tonight. Like
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we
it
love
was
to see
great. It
it.
was great. It was weird that it was Feyre and Lucian who kind of have like a brother sister thing going on. But I mean, I would cuddle with my sister to survive a mountain. So
Right,
whatever.
exactly. And I mean, like Lucian's so hot.
Yeah,
Like Lucian's
yeah. That's
so
why I
hot.
wanted more of him. Okay,
Yeah,
this is just to like kind of circle back to the hand mashing thing.
sure. Why
If
not? Like,
yeah, if Feyre would have like had a night of like, man, there would have been a better way I could have handled that, like a little bit of trouble in her mind because of it. That would have
interesting.
satisfied me because then I would have gotten satisfied with the revenge base instincts are fulfilled and sated, yet also like, kind of a bully
Like
move.
a retrospective vibe check kind
Yeah,
of on
yes,
that.
yes.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant way of putting it. A retrospective vibe check, and I would have been like, totally, I feel you. But
Yeah,
she was just
because
kind of like, haha, got her good. And it was like, wow,
well, and that's why I mean
did.
it's a little bit more of a it felt a little out of character because I mean Feyre is not that one dimensional. I mean, she does have some deeper aspects of her, and we are seeing
Yeah,
most of this book through her eyes. And for the most part, I feel like she's got a pretty nuanced way of looking at things, and she's a good point of view character for these books. And yeah, I agree with you. That is kind of weird. I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit when, the royals were like, ah, we've actually been poisoning you this whole time. And then she's like, they like defeat them, and she's like, oh wow, this poison's really getting to me. And it's like right now, like you haven't noticed it at all
oh
up
wow.
until this exact point when you and Lucian have to leave after you've already killed the people that poisoned you. It's like, oh, here comes that poison. It's like, wait, this has been going on for
Yeah.
months. How have you not? Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah. And then, like the first time she sees them, they go into they're like all sitting around the dinner table, and like Lucian and Tamlin don't have their walls up because they're distracted or something, and I don't know why. And so she like group casts and does like a mental shield protection for the whole party. She's able to hold both twins off. It's like I didn't even know she had mind powers before this book, and now she's
Oh,
like
she has mind
telling people
powers.
like, "Forget this, forget that. You did this. Think about." It's like, what? Are you Death Note over here? Like,
I mean, I think that she's been honing. If any skills have been honed, it's her mind powers. Like
but
her and
the mental
Rhysand had been.
controlling other people, like shields, I
I'm
get, but she
yeah,
was
I'm
telling
trying.
people like straight up, forget that.
Yeah, I can't remember actually. If I know that her and Rhysand had done some training on it, and she. I mean, as far as you know, her being exposed and kind of immersed in certain aspects of the training of her powers, I think that the mind aspect of those powers has been the most honed. Um,
Yeah,
and that's pretty earned, pretty fair. But I don't
yeah,
know if it's
definitely
to
the
the point
shielding.
where she can like literally control the minds of other people.
Yeah, I mean, there was parts, she literally told Ianthe, like, you'll never be able, like, you'll have to forget this and you won't be
Yeah.
able to talk about this or anything. And then there was a part where she had planted a seed inside a guard that Ianthe did something or she didn't do something and then removed that at the perfect time when during his judgment or whatever. And he was like, it was her. And it was masterfully done, but it was just like, whoa, she has ultimate Xavier control over this person's brain right now.
So this is the third book in what a lot of people call the first trilogy. I don't know how accurate that actually is, but these three books are looked at sometimes as like a trilogy, and then we've got A Court of Frost and Starlight to break it up, and then A Court of Silver Flames is from Nesta's perspective. So by the end of this book, personally, I was getting kind of like, all right, let's. I don't want to be with Feyre anymore.
Nope.
I'm kind of done with Feyre. She's not the most interesting character in these books
No.
by a long shot. I mean, personally, I think like my favorite characters are Nesta, Cassian, and Asriel. Those are my three favorite characters in this whole series. I like Elaine a lot too. Yeah, Feyre. I don't know. She gives me kind of like Harry Potter vibes
I would say
sometimes.
Amryn, Cassian, and
Amryn's really
and
cool
Lucian.
too. Yeah.
Amryn, Cassian, and
Yeah.
Lucian are my
Well, so
favorites.
so it's kind of a Harry Potter situation for in my opinion where like Harry is not that interesting of a character. He is the point of view
Right.
character, but him being kind of not as interesting almost makes the other characters around him shine.
Totally. And they have the one shared trait that is very important for this driving character to have, which is they get it done. Sometimes even
Yeah.
self-destructively so. They just
Yeah,
like
but they're
move
very
the plot
proactive.
forward. So
Super proactive.
yeah, they're a good
And that
person to be holding the camera.
Yeah, and I mean, say what you want about Feyre, but I mean, her intentions are very good. She's super proactive. I mean, she does a fairly decent job at like listening to her friends and listening to counsel from other people. Like she doesn't just as these books go on, she's a little more cautious and open to new ideas and things like that. Whereas in the first book, I mean, when she leaves her estate to go rescue Tamlin, it's just like full steam ahead, not going to pick up any weapons, not going to try to like protect myself or anything. And when you were kind of dishing out some hate about that in the first book, I remember thinking like, yeah, but that's there and you can see the growth happening over these books and to her kind of like developing into this high lady of the night court, this wise in the ways of the world person,
Yeah,
at least more so than so if you look at it through the lens of these three massive books, you can see her arc and the improvement in like her kind of like savviness, um,
totally.
which is really
I
cool to look at. But by the end of it, it's like, okay, let's move on to somebody else. You know what I
Yes,
mean? Like, it's a lot of
fully
face sand.
100% with you.
Yeah,
Face it.
face
But
sand.
there were good things too. Like you said, she learned a really awesome part of this book that was just a really cool thing to keep her character like interesting and not so perfect that you're like, we get it. Was her flight. She wasn't great at that. It hurt a bunch. She was sore. Whenever she was alone, like traveling to the library on her own, she'd try to like flap around a little bit and like totally eat shit, which was great. Very clever writing.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a fantasy. It's and there's a power fantasy element to it as well, especially it being written in first person. There's some self-insert there that gets there's a space there for you as the reader to kind of self-insert sometimes as well. I mean, who wouldn't want to be swooped off their feet by a 7 foot tall tattooed supermodel with bat wings? I mean,
And the
personally,
voice of an angel.
right, yeah, like I'd be pretty cool with it. And then all the trappings around that too. I mean, the way that Valaris looks, the way that the Night Court looks, the aesthetic of everything.
Oh,
Everything is, yeah,
beautiful.
everything is like very beautiful and stylish and stylized. And I pictured Valaris and the Night Court in general, just kind of like every room that they're ever in and every space that they're ever occupying is just like it's the height of like minimal luxury. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it's very
Like a
it's
boho.
boho.
Yeah, boho. It's like a hippie minimalist style.
You mean Bauhaus?
No, BOHO.
Boho. I don't know. What is? I'm looking that up right now. What does that look like? Oh, totally. Yeah, this, but like
Yeah,
darker,
yeah. Yeah, it's
obviously.
like it's like hippie minimalist, right?
Sure. One of my favorite parts in this whole book is when Feyre and Lucian are on the run, and then they run into Lucian's brothers from the Autumn Court. I think they're out like out on the ice, right?
Uh-huh.
What did you think about that scene?
it made me laugh first off because Lucian's like, "Hey, we should not go north because it's going to go straight into my dad's land, and he will absolutely 100% see us if we go through his land." She's like, "We'll just have to like be sneaky," and then they get
Come on, Lucian. Didn't
immediately.
you ever hear about crouching behind bushes?
Yeah, man. And they just like what Lucian tells her is going to happen immediately happens. And then they have to kind of struggle, fight, a little camping and running, which was great. The story needed a
Yeah,
little bit more camping and running. Though I will say, for a story where almost everyone can beam and teleport, there was a lot of chase scenes. This one worked because they didn't have their abilities, right? They were
yeah,
magical powdered here in
totally.
this specific occasion, but there's a lot of scenes that you're like, why are you running through the forest? Like, just teleport away.
Don't worry about it.
Even on this scene, like her brothers or Lucian's brothers are like chasing them across the ice, just like teleport in front of them.
Nah,
Like,
the fun is in the chase.
yeah, though they
I
were.
totally understand what you're saying.
Well,
Obviously,
yeah, and one could make the argument they were like melting the ice, so they were in it for the slush game, but it's like, also they're running across the ice. Are they melting the entire lake? I just kept thinking, like, are they melting this entire lake simultaneously, or just the path that they're running into?
I mean,
I
what I
get
mean,
stuck on
what do you think
details.
about the? Yeah, you'd think by the end of this book you would have learned.
I know, literally, and there's so many times like, Chad, move
It's fine.
on, man. It's not the point.
What do
Sure.
you think about the conversation between like Lucian and his brothers? Like, what, or at least like the interaction there?
It was good. There was no doubt in my mind that Lucian was fully justified in his kind of opinion of his family and the way that he just kind of rejects everything that they're about.
Totally.
And that just gave us all the proof we need that we didn't really even need. I trusted him, but man, it was just like, ugh, it kind of brought his back. And that's see, she made me care so much because I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this cool little window. We're getting into his background. All the stuff that has been hinted at that he's been suffering through in his life is now like being evidenced in front of our eyes. What a deep, awesome character. And then like send him off.
Yeah. Ah, they just got rescued. Okay, don't worry about Lucian
Yeah,
for a little
man.
while.
Like I just felt like there was so much and I guess I'm a little salty on this one particularly because he was my favorite character, one of my favorites. I just wanted to see him become one of the crew.
So you've seen a decent amount of the courts here by now. Is there a place in Prithian that you would want to shack up and live?
Definitely Valaris. Is it a port? It's not on the ocean, is it?
I don't think so. I can't
That's its one
remember.
flaw.
I would hang out personally in the summer court.
That was where they had the High Lord meeting, right?
Right, yeah. Where Tamlin walks in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
that was a jaw drop scene for sure.
it was indeed. And
Ooh, this is getting dramatic.
this, yeah, so dramatic. Man, there's a lot of drama. um, you're right. The aesthetic of that place was super cool. It's kind of like an ancient Greek, like everyone
Yeah,
wearing togas,
yeah, I liked it
chilling
a
with
lot.
like
Yeah.
fountains and water everywhere. It was great. Very relaxed environment. Yeah, Tamlin coming into that. It was weird. It was like everybody was playing everybody, but they weren't.
I still don't really buy that all of the High Lords wouldn't be pretty open to the idea of, or at least more open to the idea of joining up to stop the threat
Yeah.
of Hybern. They can get back to their kind of like inner squabbles, but this is obviously an outside threat that if they all got together, they could just squash it real quick, you
Right.
know? And
Or at least have a chance.
it feels like kind of a false conflict almost, where it's like I don't really see, other than just like being stubborn, like I don't see like why the High Lords wouldn't all band together and just deal with this threat and then
Right.
kind of just go back to like it's just like Resand is just like nobody's listening to me. This is obviously such a problem, and it's like, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
And
this is a
why aren't
huge
these other,
problem.
like there's not really any real reasons why the other people aren't agreeing with you. They just don't like
No.
you. Like
And
that's
it's
why
like,
they don't want to
okay,
cooperate. They don't like Resand.
right, because of this history and that history, and your
Yeah, but
family did
like
this.
one that's always something that bugs me though, and it's like it's bugged me in a lot of other series too, and like it's not that it's not realistic, but it's annoying that these people are in such high positions of power, but they're not smart enough to realize like the benefits of just joining together so they can take out this threat that is
Right.
it's an actual existential threat. There's not
And
really an
there's even
argument
lines
about it.
like, well, he's not attacking my land. He's up in yours. It's like, okay, well, you're a creature that lives thousands of years. Do you not think that over the once he's done there, he's going to move? Like, of course he will. He's going to take you out piecemeal, and you're all going to go down. Like, of course. Like, I don't know. It just seemed like unreal.
It
Like
feels
there
a
was
little bit
no
like
reason.
it's like a little bit of a fabricated conflict. It's like
Yes.
it's just we have to have it so that people disagree, so that we have like these meetings and we have these issues between the courts, and it's I don't know. I don't know.
Right. And there was like no reason for Tamlin to come to that meeting because one, he just like undermined his own spy abilities if he truly was working from the inside. Because like, what if he gets found out? It's not like he was like, okay, guys, on this date, I'm gonna do this thing, and it will really be a complimentary action if you guys do this, and then we can together do this. And it was like, no, he just comes and he's like, gonna make you think that I'm probably with you, but we don't really know even. Like, all right, peace. And they're like, what? Why
But
did you even
Tamlin
come?
Tamlin is a spy in the Highburn court, right? But
Right.
not for the Highburn court. But
No, not for them. Yeah, no, he's. I wish. I guess he could have told to the Highburns, which is why he's going to this meeting.
yeah,
Because Jurian
yeah.
did later say, like, Tamlin went back to the Hibernians or whatever and told him
The
everything
Hibernians.
yeah, and
Yeah,
told him
the
everything that we plotted or whatever.
yeah, the politics in this book are weird. Let's just hey, let's talk about some other high points real quick.
Okay,
Let's not get
okay.
super bogged down in the details.
I really liked Helion.
Yeah, Helion's awesome.
He was really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I'm not gonna. I know we're trying to hit the high points here, but while Helion
We
just got
got
brought up, I have to
five
say,
seconds in. Go
okay,
ahead. Go ahead.
failed opportunity. Lucian's father.
Yeah.
What? Cool. We figured that out. Great. Never mentioned. Not even a thing ever again. It's like one little like kind of cool conversation between Rhysand and Fisher's like, did you know? They're like, they look, and he was, cheating on with her, and wow, and
Yeah.
then not ever again the whole rest of the book. It's like, and he's even around. Helion's around all the time. So is Lucian later. It's like, what? There was so much. There could have been some depth there. A lost father, and Lucian being like, "I do have family. Oh man, I've always wanted a good family member that wasn't a total piece." And here it is. It's gonna be this growth, this awesome like joining, and like I don't know. It was just missed opportunity.
Yeah, I've read some other accounts by people, because if you go online and look up reviews for this book, as long as you and I are talking about it, which is like an hour or so, like there's people that have written like tens of thousands, like dissertations
Oh my
on
gosh.
why Lucian was done dirty in this book, and like because I think a lot of people feel like you do, where Lucian is extremely interesting, even not going super in depth with what his situation is.
Yeah,
A whole book could have been written about Lucian.
totally.
And yeah, yeah.
And it should be. Maybe that's her. Maybe that's her thing. Like his adventure to find the Firebird Queen or whatever. That would be a great story. I would love to know all about that.
Speaking of the Firebird Queen and all that, what did you think about Lucian showing up with Feyre's dad at the end?
Okay, let's just talk about that whole
We could
end
talk. Yeah,
sequence and the battle.
we've covered some stuff. Let's talk about the ending.
So that scene was brilliantly beautiful, like vibrant. Like to describe her world is so colorful and just like even her blood is pretty. It's just like so gory and like deliciously gory. It's like very good, very good.
Right.
But the actual mechanisms of the battle were uninteresting and repetitive.
It's a
It's
long
like, yeah, we
battle.
get saved. No, it's still not
It's like
enough.
a
We get
hundred
saved.
pages. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot.
Which, don't get me wrong, I am so down for 100-page battle. I loved it. It was very good. Like, again, I'll always go back to like this book was fun to read, and that battle is no exception. It is fun to read. But it's just like how many times like it's at the line's about to break and like someone rides in to save the day, but then like the line's about to break again. It wasn't enough, and then someone comes in again. It's like, oh my gosh, all right. And then her dad, I couldn't quite fully enjoy the merchant king, I guess is what we're calling him. He's even got a name.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Yeah,
It's
because I was so my rag had been wrung out so many times by the time we hit that moment that
I know. By the time he comes along, you're just like, and that's what we did at the beginning of the episode. It's just like, sure,
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 sure he does.
sure he does. He shows up
Yeah,
in the nick of
and
time.
he's both he's riding the Elaine, the Nesta, and the Feyre. Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
sure.
You know what though? I'm glad it happened though because a few reasons. So, we need to button up them having a human father.
Yeah, yeah, he needed to go.
He's not going to fit into the rest of this.
Nope,
Him being killed by the King of Highburn, as brutal as it is, from like an objective, like looking at the narrative, like it's a good idea to kill off
totally.
like in that way too. And then it's a good idea to give Elaine and Nesta some agency there and have like Elaine come up and kill the King of Highburn, and then Nesta cuts his head
I
off.
love
And
that. Yeah,
yeah, that's all cool. I mean, okay, okay. So Elaine killing the King of Highburn is another kind of like sure. It gave me like Arya killing the Night King vibes.
yeah. It's like, what did he not have plate on his back? Like, mail?
But with Elaine, it felt even less earned because at least Arya made sense because she had been training as an assassin for so long.
She worked
Um,
hard.
but Elaine just kind of like comes in out of nowhere. What'd you think about that though? I mean, do you think it's fine that Elaine killed,
It
not killed, but like incapacitated the King of Highburn?
right. Um, I do think it was cool.
And he just killed their dad.
Oh yeah, it was a cool turning point in her growth as a character of like I am not going to stand on the sidelines puking and let other people decide my fate like and watch my friends do all the fighting. I'm going to get in and get
Yeah,
my hands
okay.
dirty. It was cool, but it needed to have a couple rungs before that step of the ladder, right? We'd like jumped up a story and it was like, man, give me a few steps before then. Have her be like, give me a few chapters or see some anger in her eyes at a few times, like there's a smoldering coal burning within her before it bursts into flame, you know?
Yeah, or
'Cause it,
maybe like there's like a couple scenes where Cassian is just kind of training a little bit with Elaine or something, where like Elaine
yeah.
maybe Elaine like shows some, but also something about her coming up behind him. It was like a sporadic thing almost. So that was kind of cool too. Not everything that these women do in these books needs to have like it, not everything has to be earned. Like not everything has to have like this, well, do they have enough training for X? There are some things that people just do in the heat of the moment. And so
And stabbing someone in the back with a knife is a pretty good
it's a heat of the
it's a
moment
pretty
thing.
good
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
It just didn't fit in my brain for like whatever reason.
Yeah.
But now that we're like kind of talking it through, it kind of does make sense that Elaine would do it because like this guy had just killed their dad. Feyre wasn't around. So it's like an Elaine Nesta thing.
And like everybody has super secret super mission powers. Like Nesta is like cauldroning, and so is Or no, Nesta is distracting the Hybern King. Reese is just like trying to take him out. Everyone has a super important mission except for
Yeah.
her.
And
And
then
so
she's
I think
given
she was
one.
like, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think I'm kind of changing my tune on Elaine now, actually.
Yeah, but I do wish I
Hmm.
would have seen that coal smoldering a little bit before it just comes out of
I
nowhere, you
yeah,
know?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
On like a personal level, a personality level.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but I mean, even the sweetest person in the world would probably stab someone in the neck if they had just killed their parent.
Definitely.
So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with that making more sense than I initially thought it did. Actually, yeah. Look at us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at
Look at
us
that. Comes
talking stuff through. Something that didn't make sense at all to me, or at least okay, it does make sense to a certain extent for the the writing of this book or whatever, but like Rhysand and Amryn both coming back to life.
that was my least favorite part. Oh
Yeah, I
my
can't. I
gosh.
like one of them
Okay.
should have died.
Yep.
I think
One of them should have died.
Amryn should have died. I'm
Yep.
fine with Rhysand coming back because there's some symmetry there where like the High Lords in the first book resurrected Feyre, and then in the second book the roles are switched. So there's some like nice narrative symmetry there, and
I
I
did think
didn't.
it was like uncreative though. It was like, okay, cool. We're going
I don't know.
Stardust
I'm gonna
magic
disagree
fairy
with you. I'm gonna disagree
globule
with you
again.
there. I don't
How
think
many
that it
little
was
fairy bomb like got magic powder bombs do they have? Can they just do
so
this
many.
forever? Like
Don't
what, a
worry
good
about it.
meal they're prepared to throw down again?
Don't worry about it.
Resurrecting people.
But I think I'm gonna disagree with you there. With Rhysand, it's kind of cool to see their roles reversed, and it's almost like a way of showing how far Feyre's come to be able to be in a position to advocate for the High King of the Night Court in her position that she's in. You know what I mean? It's like it's a nice,
Yeah, okay. We're looking at it from that angle. That works for me.
but Amryn should have died
Yep.
because I've
There's
like
just no reason.
commit to a death, Maas,
Yeah.
Mrs. Moss. You took all the depth out of a sacrifice like that by bringing her back. Like, give the readers someone to mourn for. Take our emotions seriously, you know? I mean, it's
Yeah, yes. That is the right way to say that. No, well
yeah,
put.
it's like I don't like having my emotions coddled in a book like that. Like, it's
Right.
almost like Moss thought that the readers wouldn't be able to handle killing off that major of a character, and it's like, well, no, we would have been able to. And you just did that two times in a row, which made both of them seem less impactful in a
Right.
way. Like, in
Right.
my
Now I just
opinion.
roll my
Yeah.
eyes at the whole thing.
Yeah, because
But
obviously, I
because
mean, we can't kill Resand. Like, he's
no.
got too much plot armor.
Right.
We're not gonna kill Resand. But I mean,
Though it
if
would have been
it
interesting.
would have been pretty cool because if this was actually if this was just a trilogy, killing off Resand would have been so tragic and so interesting.
Even if it's not, she's like back on the market, you know? This story can get steamy again in like that
No,
six
it
month
was her
early
mate. There's
relationship.
no way. No, Pharaoh wouldn't have. Pharaoh would have been alone in a tower for the rest of
Yeah,
her
you're
life, just
right.
looking out at the ocean for the rest of her life. Like,
Tamlin's
my
like,
mate.
hey.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Tamlin's never getting
Yeah,
this again.
no, no, he is not. But yeah, that would have been tragic and interesting. But I'm okay with him coming back. I'm even okay with him, especially since you've explained it the way you did, with the mechanism being the High Lords doing their thing again.
Well,
But
yeah, yeah.
him like running, like getting pulled back, and then like seeing Amryn in like the death mist of the cauldron and being like, "Hey, I'm going this way. Care to hop aboard?" And she's like, "Sure." And then like they're both alive. Like, what?
Yeah.
It was like she couldn't think of another way, so she had to use the one way to get them both back.
It made it go from a serious kind of, if I can compare it to like TV shows or something like that, right? It made it go from a serious like HBO style, like serious stakes and real consequences and sacrifice to like a sitcom, you know?
Right.
Like, it just dumbed it all down, and it just, I don't know. I mean, I really liked Amryn, but Amryn's character, like, Amryn feels like the kind of person that wouldn't come back from that. That would almost like
Yeah.
look for the next adventure after this lifetime that she's had. Amryn is so much more interesting than being brought back to life to come hang out and drink fucking beers with
Totally.
everybody
That's why
again,
she's
you
in my
know?
top
Like,
three list.
yeah,
She was
like,
great.
so it really just, it took a lot out of Amryn's character for me, and it's like, I just I don't know. It's just commit,
Yeah.
you
Commit.
know?
We did not need another person being a high fae body either.
Yeah, like stick. Oh yeah, forgot
Oh
about
my
that.
gosh. It's like, again?
Everybody, you get a high fae body. You get a high
You
fae
get a high
body.
fae.
I want a high fae
Yeah, I want a
body.
high fae body.
Yeah,
Jeez,
I
come
have a
on.
fucking low fae body. This low fae body talk fucking powered by Taco Bell.
So good though.
I wonder if in Prithian you can eat as much Taco Bell as you want and it just
Oh, for
never
sure.
affects you at all. Like,
Oh yeah, dude.
you
You
don't feel
can.
tired anymore after
Yeah,
you
I
eat.
don't think they poop. Pretty sure there's like a non-pooping culture. Magic eats up the rest.
Ah man, yeah, they're all perfect.
They are so. However, man, again, her ability to describe the perfection is so good. There's a I'm gonna find it in my notes here. Give me one second. So her Sarah J. Maas's ability to describe Nesta is just very good multiple times. One of them is when she describes her as being devastating. I love that for a word of being attractive, and especially for Nesta's specific breed of attractiveness, right? Because it's just like it kills you so good, but like she's also just like has death daggers shooting out of her eyes, both literally and figuratively, after her little dalliance with the cauldron. But yeah, I just loved like she was devastating. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then she also is described at a later point in the book as having uncut power.
Yeah, that's
Like
a good one
that's
too.
a
Yeah.
cool phrase right there. Uncut power. Like, all
I know
right.
Masa's writing style. I have such mixed feelings on it because sometimes it feels so like rushed through and like kind of like it kind of stumbles over itself a little bit sometimes. If we're really kind of like digging deep into the prose here and like digging deep into the writing style, and like just the general readability of some of this, like these, if you go down like line by line, some of it is just like pretty clunky words, just the order of words, like the
Yeah,
there's some like
she's
kind of like
being.
passive voice and like weird sentences and all the em dashes and ellipses and stuff, and just like the flow of certain conversations is just weird and unrealistic, and it's just but then other times with the descriptions and snappy dialogue and like well plotted out like action cuts and
Mhm.
great blocking and terrific bird's eye descriptions of things, and
Yeah, and group sequences, that's really hard to do. A group
yeah,
conversation sequence, it's difficult and easy to get confusing.
and she's excellent at taking a normal kind of more intimate, slow, peaceful situation and just jamming action right into it immediately, and then
Yes.
everything is chaos, and she does that multiple times in these
Very
books, and
fun.
she's very very good at that. But yeah, it's just it's just sometimes it's just you're reading along and like nothing's happened for a little while and everybody's just like laying around on like chase lounges, and just like their
Yeah.
shirts are all like half buttoned and they're just like meh meh meh. Oh, he threw back a retort and then oh like a smirk over here, and then
Yeah.
it's just like what are we doing right now? Like what
Right,
is
nothing. Like,
yeah.
aren't you guys like meeting to discuss like
Like
the
the
end
fate of the
of
world. Yeah. It can be a little bit of a mixed bag, but I mean
Yeah.
this whole series is kind of a mixed bag,
I mean,
you
for
know.
sure. And, the awesome mixed with the what, sure, is a reoccurring theme. Like the bone carver, I don't even know if I like or don't like that whole thing. It's like I really do. The bone carver is interesting,
I think
and
it's pretty cool.
I don't know. Okay, so his motivation for staying, because he doesn't want to. They like try to entice him to help them in the fight with the spell in the book that Amron's been learning that might be able to send him home. And he was like, "No, I don't want to go home. I don't think home even exists anymore. It's been so long." And then they're like, "Well, maybe we can like free you from this prison." And he's like, "I don't want to be freed from this prison because I have two sisters that are death gods, and if they know where I'm at, they'll like totally kill me." And then in the final battle, one of his sisters, the Weaver Death God, is like right next to him, and they like high five, and it's like, man, his like one thing was he didn't want them to know where he was, and now he's standing next to them in a battle line. Like, wouldn't he be pissed? Like, I don't know. It was just, and then like Bryaxian or what, I have no idea where she picked up that demon. He was like along for the ride. She was just walking by the pit on her way out. It was like, hey, Bryaxian, you want to join her? I'm getting the name wrong, but I literally don't know where she picked him up. He was just there.
Yeah. I don't really have much to say about
Yeah, so it's like I said, I really want to like the Bone Carver because he's interesting and cool and adds a really like awesome element, and like we get to hear little bit about we get to hear a little bit more about Amron's backstory being in the prison. But then it's just like, well, why did he even have those motivations? Because that motivation is the entire reason that she has to go get the Bora Bora mirror and
the
give it to him.
Ouroboros.
And then he doesn't even want that anyway. He's like, I just wanted you to get it for you. And it was like,
That was really weird.
what?
Yeah.
It was
I
like
just wanted
so
you to get it for
cool.
you.
And then it wasn't.
I'm just looking out for you, Farah. Let's see how
Yeah.
much growth you can really go through.
Yeah. Though I will say the killing, a scene that felt earned and yes, and proper vengeance is, and they got me a little emotional. I really like the Surreal, and I really like Surreal and Feyre's relationship. She
Yeah.
keeps catching him, and he keeps being like, or he, she, I don't really know what gender this is, but not important. It keeps telling her things that it probably shouldn't, it's like an oracle, and he's like, all right, I'll throw you another bone. Okay, I'll throw you another bone. And I think they got a cool thing. Ianthe shows up out of nowhere, kills it, and it's super emotional, not
Very
cool.
emotional. Yeah.
Yeah. And then minus the fact that Pharaoh's running through the forest when she can winnow, whatever. She's running through the forest and they're running after her. And even though they win, whatever. And then they get to the Weaver's cottage and she like goes in, like tricked you, and slams the door behind her and like locks them in. That was just like revenge done right.
Yeah, I really like all of your notices about this. It's so cool. I mean, because I've already read all this stuff, and it's just so neat to see somebody's reactions to these books so long after I've read them. And it's,
Taking you down memory lane.
I just, yeah, I can't wait to do this again with the Dark Tower because
Oh
I've
my
already read
gosh,
all of
yes.
those. Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. I want to say the Cauldron. It just kind of makes me giggle. Um, it's just like this. It's like a. I picture like a claw-footed bathtub
Yeah, me
that
too.
they're just kind of like
There's that
dragging
green
around.
liquid like bubbling from it constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that because when in the second book, when they're like, we have to find the feet, I was just like, they're looking for like
Like
bathtub
why?
feet, like
Yeah.
that's the MacGuffin in these books. Yeah, the cauldron is one of those things in these books where it's just like, okay, it's like whatever Maas
Whatever.
decides the cauldron can do is what it's gonna do.
Right. Like it controls death magic. It can take down the wall. Like a freaking course it can take down the wall. Like they're all like surprised when the enemy starts using the cauldron offensively. And it's
Shocked
like,
Pikachu.
yeah, it's like, of course. Of course he's going to use it offensively.
It's like the most
What
powerful
were you
magical
thinking?
object in the world.
Yeah.
What did you think about Lucian and Elaine? Do you think that that should have been addressed more? Do you think that it was just
For
the right amount?
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it would have given us the, it could have been the situation that provided the stepping stones for Elaine's growth towards that stabbing moment of I am going to no
Oh,
longer
like
stand
maybe
by the
they
sidelines
were
and
training
seize my
together
fate.
and like getting,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe
And
they were,
then
maybe, yeah, that might have
Lucian
worked.
just
Yeah.
deserved a greater part of the story. I'd like to he obviously like really had a thing for Elaine. It was like trying to like be very caring, even when Feyre totally not cooled, jumped into his mind and just like mind it was not cool. It was not cool for her to just jump into his brain because she wanted to see what he was thinking about her sister because she was interested. It was like a total invasion of privacy. And then what she suffers not at all for, besides like kind of feeling bad. And Reese is like, well, if you feel bad, then that's it. Learn from me. Literally, that's the conversation. She's like, should I tell him? And he was like, ah, like, why stir the pot?
Why
If you
stir the
feel
pot?
bad, that's good enough.
That's
And it was
enough for
just like,
me.
man, and what she found in his brain was him being just the greatest guy. And I don't know, I'm a little salty that Lucian was not given a greater piece of the stage for this book.
I have another question. I'm just kind of firing questions at you.
Sure.
Um, do you feel like Tamlin was redeemed at the end of this book by him helping to bring Rhysand back to life?
So yes, I feel the exact same way about Tamlin's ending that I do with Elaine's. Yep, that's where it needed to end. But the stepping stones along the way could have been a little bit more meaningful. Like we had the
He had joined the cause, right? I mean,
yeah, but like I don't know,
that's
we had
enough. Go
yeah,
ahead.
but I would
I
have loved
keep
to see a
interrupting you.
little bit more from
Like asking
his.
you questions and
No, no, you're
interrupting
fine.
you.
Your answer is
No,
stupid.
Chad,
No, stop.
answer the question the way I want you to answer it. Go ahead.
Like it was just I could have done with some of his, but like what is he struggling with? Like Feyre obviously hates him, has a lot of resentment there, as she well should, but we're only seeing the resentment filter towards him. Like I would like to see what is Tamlin struggling with emotionally inside. What is his feelers going happening? What are they doing this whole story?
Hmm.
And like see what he's struggling with because like he's really trying to do what's best for his court the entire book. He's not actually being evil. And so I would have liked to see him struggle with that a little bit more and like overcome his like clearly they should be together. Clearly what I did was not cool. And then like kind of reach towards this moment where he that culminates in him giving a piece of his power to the person that he hates to save the person that he used well still loves but no longer loves him. And then she like leaves him a note that's just like I hope you're happy. I was like, what? Like send him a text message. I don't know. There was just like it could
Like
have
an
been
email.
more meaningful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But
All
I
right.
liked it. I liked where it ended. I just, like I said, it could have been some more mediocre medium steps in between.
So, on the whole, do you feel like this book felt rushed at all, or do you feel like it felt right where it should have been. What are your thoughts on that? Because apparently, that's a lot of the criticism that I've seen specifically for this book is that Sarah J. Maas was under a lot of pressure to finish this because the previous books were so popular. So a lot of people thought if she had given some more time and kind of devoted a little bit more of her mental energy to this process, or had more time to devote the mental energy to this process, then we would have probably got a product that made a little bit more sense, and felt a little bit more like we were shining light on the characters that we really wanted to see light shed on. Or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I think it was a little like the pacing wasn't rushed. I want to be clear in that like I don't think that the pacing was rushed. She kind of has a chaos shaking of the snow globe at every turn that you don't expect and sometimes you do, and that's delightful. I love that as
Yeah, not
that
too many dull
style of her.
moments.
No, yeah, it's just fun and keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's very good paced wise, but rushed as far as just like, yeah, I think she was slamming the story together, and she, instead of taking the time to get out the string and the push pins and create a big old wall of origami chaos and figure it all out and then really give us a interwoven story, she just kind of like got out the beaten stick and was like, this story needs to go here, and just like whipped it into shape. This
Right.
person has this power now and this person can do that, and then cool, this person goes bam bam boom boom, now we're here. It's like, okay, but a little bit more time would have left me a more satisfied reader.
It's really funny how even though the events kind of stumble to the end, it's like you're still satisfied with the ending.
Oh, totally.
Isn't that weird how I agree with you that there are certain things that felt a little bit it was almost like forcing a round peg through a square hole, you know? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
and it's like but she got it through the hole.
she
And
did.
and then and then you get to the end and you're like, well, whew, that was a lot, but I kind of want to get into the next one
It's like
now.
eating a blizzard too fast. It's like
Yeah, it's
you
eating ice
shouldn't have
cream.
done it, but like at no point are you like, I hate this. Even afterwards, you're like, that was so good.
I
I would
could
do
use
that
another
again for
one of these.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need a cheeseburger. Like,
Yeah,
let's
along with it,
go.
get some fries
Yeah.
to dip in that shit. Yeah.
Yeah, the a quarter of frost and starlight is definitely the fries on the side here.
Is it
It's
nice?
oh, it's awesome. Yeah. So
That's the
I've got a
novella, right?
yeah. I've got a couple more questions for you, and then we can probably start wrapping up. So, out of the three books so far, how would you rank these?
213. Oh, but
Uh,
it depends. It really matters on, man, I don't even know how to answer this. Okay, let me answer this in my personal enjoyment.
okay. Yeah.
My enjoyment as I read it, 231.
Okay. Yeah.
And then as
Yeah.
far as like writing a good book, I'm gonna go 213.
I think I agree with you. Well, no,
Yeah.
actually, no. It's 213 for both of them for me. Um,
Really?
yeah, I mean, two is the fan favorite, at least as far as I've seen. People seem to really like two the most. A lot of people like Silver Flames a lot too. But I
Is
like
that the
two.
fifth one?
Yeah, I like two a lot. But we're just talking about these three. So I
Yeah.
like two a lot because it's so like introspective and it's so like it's so descriptive and lush, and we're seeing the new places for the first
Growth
time, and there's
phase.
so much growth, there's so much, like, I still really like Feyre, and I'm so
Hmm.
interested in where she's at, where she's trying to go, where she's been, how she's reconciling all this stuff, mixed in with this new love interest, mixed in with the new friends that she's making, mixed in with a new threat that they're
The
trying to
trauma that
overcome.
she went through the
Yeah,
last book.
like Mist and Fury is a really fantastic book. I like A Court of Thorns and Roses a lot because it embraces these fantasy tropes so well, does its own thing with some of them, keeps some of them intact, and is just a nice, perfect introduction to the world. But it is a little bit on the slow side sometimes. Like Feyre spends a
Yeah.
lot of time in the Night Court just kind of like hanging. A Court of Thorns and Roses feels a little bit like lopsided to me. It's like very front loaded and very back loaded, but the middle drags a little bit. And then yeah, Wings of Ruin is just it's just this. I feel like it just exponentially gets more and more ridiculous and confusing and convoluted
Wacky.
and wacky, and then but caps out it's just like this really nice quasi cliffhanger, but also buttoning up a lot of things in a pretty satisfactory way. But there's like the road to get there had a lot of plot holes and
Yeah.
potholes in it. So yeah, so while I like them all quite a bit, I still think yeah, Mist and Fury of the three is definitely the strongest one.
Yeah. And I'm also looking back, like you are looking at it from like 1,000 foot view because you've like there's been a substantial amount of time between your reading it and looking back
Yeah,
on the
and I've
story.
forgotten some stuff too. Obviously, like
Whoa, no,
there's
I'm not
yeah,
saying that to like reduce your opinion. I'm saying that to like I'm so fresh in the like F you Tamlin, so it's like it's hard for me
yeah,
to look back and feel what I felt when she was being swam with in the star pool, he was telling about his childhood, and like the
yeah,
perfect magical like romantic bliss of those scenes because they're all tainted through my like but he was actually just a jerk in the long run sort of
totally.
like, retrospect. So maybe my opinion will change a year from now. We'll see, but
Well,
that's definitely the order I'm going for right now.
and I've had a lot of time to like look at a lot of the discourse around these books too, because it's really interesting to see what everybody else thinks about this stuff. And the conclusion that I've come to is that there's almost no conclusions to come to on a lot of this stuff. Like everybody has completely different opinions about how they feel about certain characters and situations and how things end up and the reasons they end up that way. And it's very there's a lot of splits in the fan base about like Tamlin and Lucian and
Hmm.
Elaine and Rhysand in book three compared to book two and the like the Highburn situation and whether or not Helion is like actually a good guy and like there's a lot of different conversations going on like peripherally that we don't even have time to get into right now, but it's almost like after so long since after a year since I've read these books, all the discourse that I've read, talking to you about it, it's like I'm still kind of fluid on some stuff. Like I'm still like, oh yeah, I could totally see
That's a
why
good
that.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Um, but that's the fun of this series,
yeah.
It's like a whole like it's like a cultural phenomenon almost.
Yeah, well, I'm excited that there's three more books because,
Oh, there's only
you
two.
know, oh, there's only two.
There's only
Oh,
two.
I thought there was another three be coming my way. Okay, well, I'm
No,
excited that
no,
there's two more books at least
like
because,
one and a half books.
yeah, there was just like I said, there was so much potential in this story for Lucian to grow a little bit. More. She has this really cool like coming out scene to
Yeah,
Feyre, and then never mentioned again. Just like
yeah.
Helion's being Lucian's father, and so it's like there's all these like things that are like, ooh, this is kind of cool. And you're like, yeah, that is cool. That could lead to some really cool character development. That person's been struggling with that for thousands of years, and we could get an answer out of that, like some resolution. Like that would be really cool and interesting. So yeah,
Well,
I'm
speaking
hoping.
of that conversation between Moore and Feyre, I thought it was like a little silly of Feyre. Like Moore comes to her with like an actual like issue that Feyre needs to like sort out,
Oh my
and then
God.
Feyre's like, "Well, you have a crush on
Yeah. Oh,
Asriel," and
it
it's like,
was like
"Wait,
not
what?
cool. She was like,
What
"Hey, dude,
the
like I
hell?"
had to tell your husband, my friend, and my leader that I didn't do the one job he assigned to me because you tricked me. Like that was not cool." And she's like, "Yeah, but you also lied to yourself." And it was like, "Dude, what? Are you just distracting me from my anger?"
Yeah, that's I think that's that's like one of the worst parts of the entire
Yeah,
book. Yeah, that's so stupid.
yeah, and it was cool that it led to, more being like comfortable to like do her thing and find out and be and expose some more of her true self to the world. But man,
Yeah,
yeah, it was
they've
kind of a
kind of
weak
stumbled their way
reaction
there.
by
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Again, another good example of just a Kane just beating this story to where it is a great place to go. It just like could have been woven a little bit more gracefully there.
Yeah, I
Whatever.
feel like it's like a lot of authors will take a like a hammer and chisel to this big block of marble and really kind of chip away and make sure that they're getting all these lines and curves correct. And then like Sarah J. Maas kind of is like dynamiting her way into a shape that she really
Yeah.
wants. And it's like, all right, I mean, it's your marble, but
All
like
right. Yeah.
it's gonna
Whatever.
come out looking kind of weird. You know,
Yeah.
has to look this way.
Yeah. Okay.
But I
I
guess like
got
a sledgehammer would probably be a better.
No, no, I like the dynamite. I literally was thinking about dynamite when you were saying that. I was like, go dynamite, go
Oh
dynamite.
wow.
Yeah, you nailed it. Okay, I'm gonna get a little real here, and I'm hoping I'm missing something because I was thinking about some of the ending happenstances of book two. I recalled that Reese, while Feyre is in Amarantha's Under the Mountain prison, Reese at one point goes through like a month. There's like an entire period between two trials where he basically forces her to get wasted, dance for the entire court just to like hurt Tamlin's feelings. And it's like, man, that is really not cool. Like you
Yeah.
abused someone and like forced them to do totally not cool things for the sake of your revenge. It's like never talked about between her. Like he never apologizes to her for that. Like, does he have any other motivations for forcing her to do that that I'm just missing?
I
It
mean, he
seems
was playing a
super fucked up.
role, right?
Right.
I mean, I guess you could say he really embraced it,
Yeah.
and played it pretty close. I'm kind of split on this. So, my initial answer is he was playing a role.
Okay.
There was a certain thing he had to commit to. He had to look like he was, you know, in on kind of humiliating Feyre, and
Okay.
having this sort of control over her or whatever. I think there are probably a lot of narrative reasons that you could point to why it would, if not justify, at least like explain that. But I will kind of tag along into your kind of like incredulity here and say, at the very least, they probably should have discussed it as a couple.
Yeah.
Maybe at least to help Feyre work through it. But then again, if it's something that Feyre didn't bring up, then maybe she didn't want to talk about it, or she wasn't
Yeah,
ready
true that.
to. There could be
There's some
that.
things that are just better left like it happened, let's move on. We're not going to help anybody
Maybe.
by digging them out, but
Yeah, it's not on
at
me to
least I
like
would love.
say somebody had to talk about something if they weren't comfortable
Right.
with it, but I feel like it was probably a part of their relationship that should have been discussed. At least I would advocate for it to at least be touched on and maybe worked through together, because that is a really messed up thing.
Totally. And
Maybe
I
they
didn't
have an
realize it at the
understanding.
time because I thought Reese was a bad guy, but like,
So here's my real answer to that. I think Sarah J. Maas wrote A Court of Thorns and Roses, and everybody loved the shit out of it, and everyone thought it was so much fun, so cool. And the publisher was like, "We need as many more of these as you can give us," and that was just part of the first book, and it's just not. It's
yep,
just not brought up again.
totally. She's
And
like, I
I
hope they
like,
forget.
yeah,
Because
I mean,
it's like a relationship ending. Like, hey, remember that time that you like forced me to dance and like portray myself terribly in front of court and on drugging me like
yeah.
against my will for like a whole month? Like that's so fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you want to just like strictly look at the narrative and like strictly look at the events that happened in these books, Rhysand had to play a certain part for Amarantha.
Totally.
That's at least my. That's. I mean, I'm sure somebody listening to this that's read these books multiple times, that's been a lot more involved in the
Oh,
discourse, would be able to give you a
there's
better
someone click
answer.
clacking on their keyboard
Yeah,
right now.
yeah. But that's at least my understanding of it.
Yeah. And lots of times I don't need a good reason to be like, okay, moving on. But like sometimes I just need a reason, like give
Right.
me something because like I did think
Yeah, but
about
you
it.
can't. That's the thing about books, and that's the thing that as you and I keep podcasting, and as we keep the discourse about books going. It's like the thing with these kinds of books, with all fantasy, is that you're never gonna button everything up. Like you're
Very
never
true.
gonna solve every problem. You're never gonna cover every base.
Right.
There's some things that aren't talked about again. There are some things because you're writing fantasy, and some things just aren't going to fit with the rest of what's going on later in the books. It's part of it. Like it's
Right.
just,
And you have
you
to
know,
I would way rather have the imagination be let free and to do
yeah,
its thing
yeah,
and end up with some like wacky like what's and in retrospect that didn't make sense than to not have those like that magical journey juice.
yeah. I agree with you. And I mean, it's just like with this series, like there are some holes in the plot. There are some things that make you raise your eyebrows. There's some things that make you roll your eyes. There's some things that make you sigh really heavily, and then you turn another page and you keep going. But I mean, even stuff that I've like movies I've watched, shows that I've watched, books that I've read with certain stories, I've gotten to the end of that story and been like, man, that was airtight. There was not one single problem with that whole story. And then I'll go on the internet and then look at some reviews, and people have lists, like giant paragraphs of why certain things didn't make sense and why there were certain plot holes. And it's like,
I mean, that was me after
can't,
reading The Name of the Wind the first time. I was like, what a perfect book.
right?
And now I'm like, what a joke you were thinking that, Jeff.
It's still a really good book. You
Amazing.
can't like, but two things can be true at the same time. You can
Yes.
have something that's an incredible experience and then have something and then have it not really make sense in certain parts
Right.
because it is being literally pulled out of thin air and put down on paper. And the thing is that you can't you can't have a book where you at least you can't have a epic fantasy book. I'm sure there are books like this where it's like it's a 100% detailed string of events in like a couple hours or something like that, right? But with epic fantasy, you are skipping over stuff. Time is going by. There are conversations that are happening off the page. There are explanations for things that are happening off the page, or there's no explanations at all for stuff because it just wasn't in the author's garden when they were planting
Right.
all this stuff,
Right. Well
and
said.
and that's fine. That's totally fine. And I like what you said about like I'd rather have the imagination be let loose and be able to fill some of those gaps myself. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, I'd rather
it's
experience it in with its flaws than not to have experienced it at all, you know?
totally, yeah. And I think you can definitely say that about this series. And I am so excited for us to go over A Court of Frost and Starlight, and especially A Court of Silver Flames, because that is a way different bag of bananas there. It is just, it is, wow.
That's through Nesta's view, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm really have an eyebrow arched in that direction because Nesta, man, I'm a really positive person, and like I really, it's hard for me to understand, like me personally, to understand people who are just like sourpusses always, and it makes me just like not like them or have very much respect for them. And so, unless they have like really good reasons or they're doing it in like a clever, cool, mysterious
They
way,
usually
insert
do.
Amryn. Um,
I think you'll like Nesta a lot. Like
okay,
there's some
okay, cool.
really good parts of Silver
Okay.
Flames. Like there's
Okay, good. Because I'm a
you
little
know
worried.
you know how you ever have a moment with like one of your friends where you kind of they've done some things and you kind of make some assumptions about them and then they kind of like come clean to you about what's been going on with them, right? And
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh, wow, I had no idea." And it's a real moment between you two. Those moments happen a couple different times in Silver Flames, and they're really visceral and really good.
Okay.
Yeah, Moss. I love Silver Flames. I think Moss hit it out of the park with that book. It's cool. It's a very
Is it
cool
your
book.
favorite?
No.
Okay. No
It's
hesitation.
way too long. It's like
Oh,
Silver
how long
Flames
is it?
just go, I don't know, but it's just it goes on and on and on and it's a cool book for sure.
Like she had reached the point of her like authoring career where
I
like
have
you
no
can take all the
idea. I
time
have
you
no
want.
idea. I'm sure there's a lot of different reasons, but I mean, Mist and Fury, in my opinion, is the best book in this series, and it's my favorite. I really like Frost and Starlight a lot, just because it's so like short to the point. There's a couple really good scenes, there's some really good conversations, but it's just like a total vibe check, and um, it's like it's like Valaris in the wintertime, and it's all
Ugh,
snowy and cool, and
I
yeah,
love
you'll like
that.
it. You'll love it.
Oh, and it's gonna get me hyped for the winter because we're going into the winter and it's about to be
Yeah,
snowy winter time in Bend, Oregon.
hell yeah.
I'm
Okay, so I
stoked.
think that'll do it for me today. I mean, like, I guess I've got one more question.
Okay.
What do you think is going to happen? Let's just stick to A Court of Frost and Starlight. What do you think is going to happen in this next little novella?
I have no idea.
That's a perfect answer. Let's leave it at that. Because let's just because I want you to go into it. I'm not gonna elaborate. I'm not gonna do anything because I just want
The
you to
only
experience it.
thing that happened that gives me anything was like at the very end of this book, Rhysand is like, well, I still got that dream, but whatever, we'll get to it on another day. And then he like harumphs and strides off, and that's like,
Yep, the
okay,
dream. Yep,
the dream.
the dream. Yep, we'll get into that
I am
in the next
looking
couple books.
forward to it. Thank you
Well,
for coming with such good questions to ask and pull all this stuff out of me. Some of the opinions I didn't even know I was like fully versed on until you were like, tell me about this. I was like, oh, yeah. So like, good job. And thank you for joining me in my ACO journey.
Yeah, I mean that's why there's two people on this podcast because if either of us was just running it by ourselves, it'd just be a lot of
Oh man.
just rambling into a mic. And we do our own share of
Totally.
rambling, but we're here to balance each other out too.
Absolutely. You're the yin to my yang.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening to our recap and discussion for Court of Wings and Ruin. This has been a very fun journey, and it was fun to pick this apart, but somehow I think I like this book a little more now after talking about it with you, Chad.
Yeah. Like I said, you never hate the blizzard.
Everybody, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, and of course, happy reading.
Bye, everybody.